This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, good morning. So today I want to continue our discussion about content-based routing. So we understand what is this content-based routing, and we also implemented one small business logic. We created one OSB project called content-based routing service, which is internally checking the content when the operation name is equal to add, so the control goes to add branch. In add branch we have a logic to route, we have a logic to invoke a target web service through a business service, correct? So we configured a business service and we are calling the business service by using this routing action. So if any target service we want to invoke in OSB, we have several options to invoke. They are something like routing action, service callout action, and publish action. Publish action is only for one-way communication, but routing action we can use for one-way communication as well as synchronous communication. And service callout is only for synchronous communication. So in today's example, I want to show you service callout action, how to configure and how it behaves, how it works, and how it is different than routing action. Okay. Right. Before we start service callout action, there are few things we need to understand before I go into the example. Okay. Let me show you some information, I mean, which is helpful before we start the service callout action. Okay. So in OSB, we have two types of variables we discussed in the beginning classes, right? Context variables and custom variables. Context variables and custom variables. Anyway, uh, body is the context variable, and you can have any other variable as custom variable. Let's say I have a variable called test_var. Test_var is my variable. Okay, so what I want to do is, let's say if your body variable contains some data, I want to store some data into body variable. I want to store some data into test variable. Okay, this is how it looks like. Suppose in the body variable, if I store something that will be in between body tag, this we know, correct? If you want to store some variable, some XML, you want to store some XML in a body variable that looks something like this. So this is very important. Listen carefully. So I have an XML called student. I stored it into body variable. When I store it into body variable, this is how the XML looks like. Okay, there is a root tag appended. There is a root tag enhanced on your XML. Okay, suppose the same XML you want to store in a custom variable, then there is no root tag available. There is no root tag enhanced here. Is it clear? The main difference between body variable and custom variable. So how it makes a difference. Suppose I want to read some data. I want to read some data. Let's say I want to read the data of name. I want to read the data of name element. Okay. So then the XPath will be something like this: body slash. See, we don't write the root element in the XPath. We don't write the root element in XPath. So here the root element is body tag. Okay, we don't write the root element in XPath. Student slash name slash text function. If you want text function, use the text function. So the same XPath you want to write it on the test variable. Okay, the same XPath you want to write on the text variable. How it will be? Dollar test_var slash name slash text. So you hope you understand the difference between body variable and the custom variable here. See the XPath how I am writing. So in XPath we never write the root element. We never include the root element in XPath. See here. Here in the custom variable root element is student. In the body variable root element is body tag. Is it clear? Okay. Suppose this is method one. While you are writing XPath, this is the method one. I mean, variable name and XPath we are writing in the same XPath. Suppose there is method 2, right? Method 2, we want to write the variable name and XPath separately. Variable, what is the variable? Body. No need to use the dollar symbol. When you are writing it separately, you don't need to use the dollar symbol. And XPath. How to write XPath? You need to start the XPath with the dot. Dot represents the root element, slash student slash name slash text function. Okay, so the same method too you can also use with the custom variables. Okay, two. So here variable name test_var, variable name is test_var. Okay, and then the XPath. How to write the XPath? You say dot that represents your root element slash name slash text function. Okay, observe the difference between body variable while you are writing the XPath on body variable, while you are writing the XPath on custom variable. Okay, so I mean there is no difference, but only thing is in the body variable we have additional tag will be appended on top of your XML, but in the custom variable there is no additional tag appended. Okay, suppose you want the complex element. You want complex element, that means student element. You want student element in your XPath. Okay, so then how you need to write it? Dollar body. That's it. If you give this, that means you will get the student element. Correct? Dollar body. So suppose, sorry, dollar body slash student. No need to write the body tag. Dollar body slash student. That means the result of it, this XPath is student. The result of this XPath is student XML. Okay, suppose the same output you are expecting in the custom variable, then how you need to write it? Dollar test_var. That's it. You don't need to write the complex element here because there is no element between variable name and the actual XML. Okay, so this is the custom variable. Custom variable XPath to get the complex element. Custom variable XPath to get the complex element, the whole XML. See, this is the XPath to get the student element from body variable. This is the XPath to get the student element from custom variable. Are we good? Any questions? Any questions? It is very important, sir, to understand today's session. It is very important. Please let me know if you have any questions. Okay? Right. So this is one thing we need to understand while you are writing XPath, whether you are dealing with body variable, whether you are dealing with any other variable, custom variable. Okay? Other than this, I need to discuss about replace action and assign action. Assign action. Okay, so when we use replace action and when we use assign action, this is very important difference we need to understand before we get into any programming, any logic we develop in OSB. Okay, very important. So when we are performing transformation between two different variables from a source variable to target variable, source variable to target variable, when you want to perform a transformation, okay, some data mapping, some data processing you want to do and copy it into target variable. Okay, some transformation you want to perform between source variable to target variable. Okay, we have to use either replace action or assign action. Okay, so when we have to go for replace action, when we have to go for assign action, this is very important thing we need to understand. Suppose I have a X variable. It contains some XML. It contains an XML. I have Y variable. It also contains some XML. Okay, some XML, anything. It may be one element or it may be 100 elements. One XML. Okay, and I have a Z variable. There is no content at all. No content. Nothing. Nothing. Not even null. There is nothing. Okay. It's in all three variables we have. Now suppose I want to transform data from a source variable to target variable. Okay, so when we are performing transformation between two different variables from a source variable to target variable, from X variable to Y variable. Transform data X variable to Y variable. For this transformation, it is always important the target variable. If the target variable already holds something, when you are performing transformation from source to target and target variable already contains something and we want to replace it. We want to replace the old data with new data. We have to go with replace action. Okay. So now let's say I want to copy the data y-var to z-var. Y-var to z-var. Okay. What is the action I need to use? Z-var has nothing. Z-var is empty variable. There is nothing. There is no data. Then we need to use assign action. Assign action. Make sure about the difference, guys. This is very important. Okay. Now tell me, suppose I have Z-var. I want to copy something into X-var. What is the action I need to use? Replace action, because X-var already contains something, some XML. Correct? So when your target variable in a transformation, when you are performing a transformation, your target variable, if the target variable contains something and we want to override the data with new data, we have to go for replace action. When your target variable does not contain anything and you want to override, you want to copy something, then we have to go for assign action. Suppose let's say I have X var, I want to copy something into Z var. Then I need to go for replace action. Replace action, because in step number 2 we copied something. See, step number 1, step number 2, step number 3, step number 4. Step number 4. See, in step number 2 we already copied some data into Z variable, and step number 4 again I want to copy something else into Z variable. So this time I cannot use assign action. I must use replace action, because Z variable already contains something due to step number 2. Is it clear when we have to go for replace action, when we have to go for assign action? Right? Is it clear? Any questions from anyone? Any questions from anyone? No? Okay. So let's talk about routing action. Routing action in a pipeline file. Service callout action in a pipeline file. Okay, sir, when you are using routing action in a pipeline file, so it's an invocation, right? It's an invocation of external system, external web service. Okay, it can be OSB web service, it can be Java web service, it can be any technology web service. When you are calling an external service, you have to use either routing service or service callout. Routing service we can use for one-way communication or synchronous communication. Both we can do by using routing. But by using service callout, you can communicate only synchronous communication. I mean, you cannot call one-way web services. Okay, by using service callout, you can invoke only synchronous web services. Okay, so other than that, in routing action, we need to configure invoke input variable, right? Invoke input variable, that is nothing but body variable. Invoke output variable, that is also body variable. So I mean, if when you are using a routing action in a pipeline, total 4 different places we use body variable: pipeline input variable, pipeline output variable, routing invoke input variable, routing invoke output variable. At 4 different places we use body variable. But when you go for service callout, okay, when you go for service callout, we don't use body variable as invoke input variable and invoke output variable. We use custom variable. Custom variable. We can define our own variable naming convention. Okay, custom variable or customizable variable. I mean, I can say user defined. Custom variable or user defined variable. Define any naming convention. Okay, there is no limitation here. User defined variable. Okay, so when you work with service callout, we don't use body variable as invoke input, invoke output. We should use user defined variable as invoke input variable, user defined variable as invoke output variable. Okay, and of course, service callout also contain three parts. Three parts. I will show you. Let me go back to the example. So in the example, CBR pipeline, CBR pipeline, which we created in the last session. So we already implemented a logic for addition branch, right? Similarly, I want to implement the logic for subtraction branch. First, check the condition. I already configured the condition in the last session. Okay, LHS part, if you go to the main conditional branch scope. Here we configure the LHS condition in the input body variable. In the input body variable, we are checking for the operation. If this is LHS condition, LHS part of the condition. Now go to second condition branch. Second condition branch. Here we will configure the operator and RHS part of the condition. Okay, operator is equal to, and RHS part is a constant, that is subtraction. We want to check operation name is equal to subtraction. Then control goes to second branch. In the second branch, I want to invoke a target service. So my target service is subtraction web service. To invoke the target service, first we need to configure the subtraction business service. Okay, let me configure the subtraction business service. I already show you how to configure the business service. Right click on the business service folder and you can select the business service. Okay, now in the pop-up you need to give the business service endpoint, whatever business service you are using. Okay, I will say subtraction bs is my business service name and it's a SOAP web service. So go to the WSDL part, WSDL option, browse it, browse it. So we should have the endpoint handy, right? We already keep our endpoint somewhere. Let me check where I copied my endpoints. Okay, this is the subtraction endpoint. Go to subtraction endpoint. Make sure you should not have any white spaces in the URL, either in the beginning or end of the line. We should not have any white spaces. Make sure. So there are no white spaces, right? I just copied my subtraction web service endpoint. Say okay. It is asking resource name. Resource name, I will say business service, right? This is the WSDL. It is importing the WSDL. What I will do, I will say subtraction business service interface. This is the WSDL downloaded into your project, into your current project. Your target web service WSDL downloaded into your current project. I named it as subtraction BS interface. And the location, I will say, go to WSDL folder. Keep the WSDL in WSDL folder. Okay. Say next. Finish. Okay. Now we are able to import the WSDL and then complete the configuration of business service. Click next and then finish. Done. See, I got a business service. I got a business service file. This is business service file and the business service file related WSDL. This is the business service related WSDL. Okay. Done. We are good with business service along with its WSDL. Okay. Now come to your pipeline file. So guys, if you want to configure service callout, before service callout, we need a stage. We need stage action. Of course, you can directly drag drop the service callout, but the process is you need to go, always you should have some staging scope kind of activity before you configure any other activity. Okay, let me drag drop the stage. Oh, is it not? Okay, let me drag drop the pipeline directly. See, when I drag drop an action, it will show you all compatible locations. Here I can drag it, here I can drop it, here I can drop it, here I can drop it. Okay. Anyway, our current logic is subtraction, so I just placed it in subtraction. Observe the pipeline. Observe the pipeline. This is a pipeline action. See guys, pipeline file. This is pipeline file and this is pipeline action. Both are two different things. Don't get confused. Pipeline file is different. Pipeline action is different. Okay. Pipeline file is a place where you can configure the complete, entire business logic. But pipeline action is just one action. You can design your required business logic, but it's not the file, it's an action. Okay. In the pipeline action, you can see there are request pipeline and response pipeline. Now let me drag drop the service call out action. Service call out action. Where is it? Here you can see service call out action. You can configure the service call out action in the request pipeline. I just placed some action in the request pipeline. Okay. So here it is asking the service call out. See, observe, service call out also contain three parts: request action, service call out, response action. Three parts like your routing. Routing also contain three parts, right? Request action, routing, and response. Service call out also contain three parts: request action, service call out, and response. So what we do in the request action, we perform the request transformation. Before performing invocation, if you want to do any transformation or any business logic, that we will do in the request action. After calling the target service, once you get the response, after you got the response from target service, if you want to design any business logic, that we will perform in the response action. Same like your routing action. Okay, same like your routing action. There are three parts in the service call out, but the difference we'll see. See here, the service call out. Let me select the service call out action. And here I need to browse the target service, which is nothing but business service. Let me browse the business service. Okay, so what is the business service I want to invoke? I want to invoke subtraction business service. Done. And here it will ask you to configure, request and response variables. It will ask you to configure request and response variables, completely custom variables. Okay, I will say subtraction input variable. Subtraction input variable. See, variable is case sensitive. Make sure whether you are giving capital, small letters, the same keywords you need to use further. Okay, subtraction input variable, and my output variable, subtraction output variable. Okay, let me keep the variable name somewhere. I just have a copy. Okay, so my invoke input variable is subtraction input variable. Subtraction input variable, this is the one. Okay, and the output variable is subtraction output variable. Subtraction output variable. We configured two custom variables in service callout, right? Done. Just save it. Now you need to concentrate on the business logic, what you want to perform in the request action, what you want to perform in the response action. Okay, in the request action flow and response action flow. So what we need to configure in the request action flow, we want to configure a transformation between pipeline input variable to business service input variable. Correct? This is the transformation we want to perform. Similarly, in the response flow also we want to perform a transformation. In the response flow also we want to perform a transformation. So what it is business service output variable to pipeline output variable. Right? Business service output variable to pipeline output variable. So two different same transformations we performed even in the routing action. Okay, here what is the pipeline input variable, sir? What is the pipeline input variable? It is body. Sorry, not body. Instead of talking about variable, first to see the structure. So this is the pipeline input XML structure. This is the business service input XML structure. So we want to create a transformation either by using xquery or XSLT, either by using xquery or XSLT, or xquery as expression, your choice. The transformation is your choice. So you need to transform the data from content-based routing request to request schema format. Okay, so you need to create a transformation between these two XSDs, right? So what are the variables we need to use? Pipeline input variable is body variable and business service input variable is subtraction input variable. So you need to create a transformation file between these two XSDs, and then you need to supply the variables, body variable as source, subtraction input variable as target. Okay. Similarly, in the response action flow, you need to create the transformation between response schema as source. This is business service output XSD, business service output XSD, or the target web service output XSD. Response schema as source, content based routing response as target. So this becomes source, this becomes source, this becomes target. Okay, for that, what are the variables we need to use? Subtraction output variable as our source, subtraction output variable as our source, and our target variable is body, nothing but pipeline output variable. Pipeline output variable. Are we good? So we need to configure two transformation files and we need to execute the transformation between the variables. Okay. So guys, in the request transformation, you want to copy the data from body variable to subtraction input variable, and subtraction input variable is a new variable. There is no data at all. Okay, source to target, you want to perform the transformation. So what is the action that we need to use? Either is it assign action or replace action? Which one we need to use? It will be decided based on the target variable. So target variable is a new variable, there is no data. So we have to use assign action to execute this transformation. To execute this transformation, we need to use assign action. Come to the second response flow. Here, once we call the business service and we got the output from business service, okay, so the output will be stored into subtraction output variable, and you want to transform the data and store the result into body variable. This time you need to use replace action because your target variable is body variable and it is target variable already contains some data at this point of time. So you need to use replace action. Is it clear, everybody? Okay, so now let me go to our program. Okay, see, in the program we want to configure the request action flow and response action flow. So guys, you can either you can use these transformations. I mean, if you see this addition to CBR response, add see, we already have two transformation files, right? Uh, we need to create the new transformation file for the same XSD. Suppose if I open this CBR request to add request, CBR request to add request. Okay, this is the same transformation we are planning, right? So this is the CBR request to add request. This is the addition request. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, three different web services we have, and all three web services are using common arithmetic interface. So we are using the same WSDL. There is no difference in addition, subtraction, and multiplication. WSDLs, same WSDL, same XSDs we are using. Okay, for that reason, it's your choice here. Either you can reuse this transformation. We have two transformations, right? CBR request to add request, add response to CBR response. Transformation files won't change, but variables will change. Okay, so either you can reuse the transformations or you can recreate the transformations. Okay, now what I want is, I don't want to recreate them, I want to reuse them. Let me go for request transformation, request branch, request action branch, and I want to copy the data from body variable to subtraction input variable. For that, I need to use an action called assign action. Assign action. Okay, so in the assign action, it's a simple configuration. Target variable contains nothing. Our target variable is empty. So we don't need to think like our replace action. Okay, replace action has many properties. It's very simple. So what I need to do, the source configuration, go to value. Here you can do the source configuration. I want to go for xquery resource. My CBR request to add request is an Xquery resource. Select it, browse. You can browse the CBR request to add request. CBR request to add request. Actually, we are executing it for business service, sorry, subtraction business service. Okay. And here it is asking for the source. Browse the source. Our source is body variable. Our source is body variable and body variable with request flavor. Okay, I mean body variable as pipeline input variable. So you need to select the root element content based routing request. See, this is the XPath. I mean content based routing request is our request XML. Okay, say okay, done. Our source is ready. Source is ready. What is your target variable? What is your target variable? My target variable is, see, what is the target variable in our notepad? What is the target variable? Subtraction input variable is my target variable. Okay. You don't see the custom variable in the drop down list. So what you can do is you can paste it. You simply paste it. Don't use dollar symbol here. You need to use the dollar symbol only when you are writing the XPath expression along with variable. Okay. So if you simply want to keep your variable name, no need to use the dollar symbol. Save it. That's it. Our assign action configuration is completed. It's very simple, right? Now go to the response flow. Response flow, we want to copy the data from subtraction output variable to body variable. Target variable is not a new variable. It's already contains some data. So we have to use a replace action. Go to replace action. Okay, replace action. Done. So once you configure this replace action, what happens? Let's wait. Taking time. Okay, anyway, so what we are expecting here, we want to copy the data between subtraction output variable to body variable. So your subtraction output variable contains response schema, this format of XML, and we are expecting to generate the transformation. I mean, we want to execute the transformation and generate this format of XML, right? So this is source. Response schema is the source. Content-based routing response is the target in this transformation. Let's see. Is it not loaded? Okay. Uh, we need to wait for a few seconds. So this is the same regular replace action only. This is regular replace action only, but there is one difference. The source variable is a custom variable, not the body variable. Uh, in the source configuration, the XPath side, you can see little bit different. Okay, you'll see the difference now once the JDeveloper is released.
This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so guys, what we want to do in the response flow, let me configure the replace action. Drag drop the replace action here. So for this replace action, the source and transformation file we need to configure. Go to Xquery resource. What I will say, I will browse my response transformation. Let this give us the pop-up. In the pop-up, we need to select the response transformation. Come on. Okay. So CB addition response to CBR response. Of course, we are using this transformation for subtraction response to CBR response. Same transformation. That's what I don't want to create a new one. So here the source is not body variable. The source is custom variable. What is our custom variable name? Let's see. Our custom variable name is subtraction output variable. See this in the addition branch, replace action. Source is body variable. Here it is business service output in body variable. See the XPath how we wrote. business output XML in body variable. Let me copy the screenshot just for your understanding. Okay, this is addition related, addition response transformation. Now go to subtraction, subtraction response. I want to configure this. Okay, here our subtraction response is not in body variable. Our subtraction response is not in body variable. Our subtraction response is in a custom variable. Our custom variable is subtraction output variable. So dollar subtraction out variable. That's it. See the difference here. This is subtraction out variable, and here it is. The previous one is subtract body variable with the root element, body variable with the XML element. Okay, when you are writing custom variable, you don't need to write that. You don't need to write that. Okay, because your root element is response schema only, but you don't have body tag. Body tag, we don't have body tag here. Okay, see the difference while writing the XPath, while writing the XPath when it is body variable, when it is custom variable. Okay, done. Now say okay. So your source is ready, your source transformation and the source variable is ready. What is your target variable? My target variable is body variable, and of course the same similar replace action. So I want to go with the dot root element, and I want to go with node content. Okay, suppose you are not interested with node content, you can change the XPath. You need to change the XPath as body content based routing, right? Content based routing. If you write this XPath, you need to go for replace node entire node. You need to go for replace entire node. Okay, done. Oh, sorry. My body variable contains input XML that I need to override with the response. My body variable contains input request that I want to replace with response. But the type replace option is replace entire node. Save everything. That's it. We are ready. Okay. So we can test this program and we can deploy and test this. Let's see how it will behave. Let me try to deploy the program. Again, it's stuck.
This conference will now be recorded.
Now you can see deploy the code. Okay, where is it? Okay, let's wait for the deployment. It will take few seconds to complete the deployment. Now you can see the message. It took 18 seconds to complete the deployment. Deployment finished. Go to, you can test your service from service bus. Before you do anything, refresh your service bus or relog it. Anything is fine. Okay, go to your content based routing service, pipeline, CBR pipeline. I want to test my CBR pipeline. Okay, so launch the test console. So you can give some data. I will say 100 and this is 10, and I want to test subtraction flow. Then the operation name I need to provide subtraction. Okay, submit the request. See here what will happen. I mean, a pipeline, the advantage of testing a pipeline, we will get a trace. We will get the trace. Okay, if you test proxy, you don't get this trace. Okay, within this trace, what you can observe in the stage one, we are using service callout. We are using service callout. When you use service callout, there are custom variables. See, these custom variables are visible in your trace. Custom variable, this is business service input variable. This is business service output variable. See the business service input XML and business service output XML. Okay, and you can see the pipeline input XML. This is pipeline input XML. content-based routing request, right? So we transformed content-based routing request as request schema before we call the business service. After we call the business service, we received a response from business service. We received a response from business service that is available in the subtraction output variable. And then finally, we performed a transformation. With that transformation, we changed, we performed a transformation between business service output to proxy output, and we replaced the data in body variable. So changed body. So your body variable modified like this, replace it like this. Okay, done. So this is how we execute service call out. So guys, here the advantage with the custom variables are visible in the trace. See, body variable, all flavors may not be visible, especially, body variable, input variable is visible, final body variable is visible, but in between, it's not that regular. We see what is the content replaced in body variable. But if you use custom variables, you can see the custom variables wherever you want. Okay, let me introduce few custom variables. Suppose I will use assign action. See, I'm just using a dummy assign action here. My expression is 1, 2, 3, some data, some static data. Okay, this is my static data, and my variable is xvar. See, this is my custom variable. I don't define it somewhere. I don't define whether this variable is integer variable, string variable, something like that. I'm not defining it. Okay, so you can, in OSB, you can use custom variables at any location, and you can store any kind of data. And let me do this thing. I want to use another assign action. See here, I place one more assign action. Here I will say this is ABC. Okay, and my variable name is yvar. Okay, done. So I'm using two new custom variables here. Let's deploy the code and see how the trace looks like. Okay, deployment finished. Now test the same web service, execute. Now you can see the flow trace. Okay, see here, you can see the custom variables in this service callout. We are invoking service callout. In this service callout, we have sub input variable, sub output variable, xvar, yvar. Okay, see this. Whatever the data, xvar contains 1, 2, 3, yvar contains ABC. You can store anything, guys. You can store anything in the custom variables. Let's see. Here, instead of ABC, I want to keep some XML. XYZ, ABC, XYZ. Okay. See, this is not even a valid XML, just an XML. That's it. There is no namespace, no qualifier, nothing. Let me deploy this. You can store anything. You don't need to define the variable and use it in your logic. No, not in that way. You directly define and use the variable within the assign action itself if you want, if you really want. Okay, let me, is the deployment completed? Okay, deployment finished. Let's test the example. Now you can see here in the stage node service callout, you can see X variable and Y variable. In the Y variable, I did not save the program or what? Oh, I did not save. Save it and then
I
deploy.
think domain is not properly taken.
Okay, anyway, let me deploy. I think I did not save it. Anyway, I saved it now and I deployed it. Let's test the service once again. Okay, now you can see your stage node. Within that Y variable. See, the Y variable contains the XML what we stored. Okay, so that's it, guys. That's it for today. So what are all we discussed today? We discussed about how an XPath behaves, when XML is in the body variable, when the XML is in custom variable, okay, user defined variable. And we saw when we have to use the replace action and when we have to use the assign action. And we saw how to use it, how to use assign action, how to use service call out action, how to configure a service call out action and how it behaves. We configured that in our example. Okay, and we saw little advantage between our custom variables. Okay, how to define the variable and how to store the data. So this is not at all program related. These two things I just configured it to show you how the custom variables behave. If you don't want it, we can delete it. It's not really required. Okay. So suppose guys, there is one more feature in OSB. Suppose you don't want this action. Now you don't want this action. Maybe later you want it. So what you can do, now you can disable it. So if you disable it, this will not get executed at runtime. After deployment, this will not get executed. You no need to delete this. So we don't have this option in SOA. We need to delete the activity or we need to use the activity, but we cannot disable enable activity. In OSB, we have an option called enable disable. If you don't want to use this activity anymore, action anymore, then you can disable it. Okay. Of course, I don't want this action, so I'm deleting it. Done. Right. So these are all the different concepts we discussed: service callout and assign action, XPath and replace assign action. The difference. Okay. So one more thing. Once this is very important difference between routing action and service callout. See, guys, when you configure routing action, suppose I want to configure some another activity, another action. Okay. Let me say stage node. If I drag drop stage node, not stage node, at least something. Let me drag drop a pipeline. Okay. I want to drag drop a pipeline in my pipeline file. Observe what are all the possible locations. Just observe. See, it is possible to drop here, and after pipeline as well. See, this is one pipeline, right? I already have a pipeline in the subtraction branch. I'm trying to drag drop one more pipeline. It is allowing me to drop a pipeline before the existing pipeline and after the existing pipeline, not between, not inside pipeline. Okay. Either before the existing pipeline or after the existing pipeline, I can configure another pipeline. Okay. But if you observe route node, you can drag drop a pipeline before route node, but not after route node. Not after route node. Observe this. This is very important difference. You will get interview questions. Okay, something like what is the difference between routing and stage callout? How many routings you can configure in one flow? One flow. Okay, you can configure only one routing, guys. One routing action you can configure in one flow. You got it? Okay. So you cannot configure more than one routing action in one flow. This is one addition branch is one flow, right? In this flow, I can configure only one routing. Subtraction branch is one flow. In this flow, I can configure only one routing. I cannot configure second routing. Okay. Suppose if you see this routing, see here, I am trying to drag drop the routing action. What it is showing? In the addition branch, it is saying you are not, it is not possible to drop the routing, second routing. In one branch, you cannot configure second routing. And second, subtraction branch, if you see, routing is allowed only at the end of the branch. No, only at the end of the branch. That means after routing, you cannot configure anything. So routing must be the last action in the branch. Is it clear? Okay, you cannot configure more than one routing action in one branch, and you are not allowed to configure any other action after routing. After routing. So is the point clear? So suppose let's assume in one flow, we want to invoke two target services. If you want to invoke two target services, then you have to use either two service callouts or one service callout and one routing. You cannot use two routings. Is it clear? Okay, we see a concept called message enrichment. In that example, we see, I will elaborate more on this routing and service callout combination. Okay, right. So that's it from my side for today. Let me know, guys, if you have any other questions. Let me stop the recording.